And welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining us. United County Sheriff Rob Mashel is our guest. We're going to be talking about local law enforcement issues. Maybe we'll even talk about some state law enforcement issues because he is the president of the New York State Sheriff's Association,
yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Still president of that. When did you start that?
It goes with the calendar year, and we're kind of in a lull right now. We're actually doing a little strategy because we certainly want to get right back at it with lobbying prior to the state legislators coming back into session. We had, as you know, a heck of a battle fighting the legalization of marijuana, and we certainly
Which you won.
We succeeded.
Yeah.
Just the other day, the governor's bill went into effect where marijuana was decriminalized, which it was a good compromise for us. Certainly, you still can't possess it. You can't smoke it publicly. If you do, there are monetary consequences. You'd get an appearance ticket. You don't take custody, which we never did anyways. And some of the things we disagreed with, but again, it's all about compromise and negotiating. Many of the criminal records will be expunged. Folks who have had prior convictions of marijuana, significant quantities, that is. And then, so again, we're going to get back at that because we're pretty confident that the marijuana, the goal of many state legislators to fully legalize it still exists. Even though we continue to show them study after study and fact after fact and whatnot. But it's a little frustrating for law enforcement this time with the legislature downstate controlling everything that's happening here. We are preparing for the October 1st. We're preparing for 17-year-olds to no longer be considered adults in the criminal justice system. Last year it was 16-year-olds. This year it's 17. So that's a big change for us.
What's the association's take on that?
Well, again, we didn't fight that one because that definitely has some pros to it. That as far as trying to get people, young people, on the right path instead of giving them a criminal record for the rest of their life. We understand that, and New York was one of the last states. I believe it was New York and North Carolina that still had recognized 16 and 17-year-olds as adults in the criminal justice system. But again, we jumped in a little too fast, and there were just a lot of things happening, and we just weren't prepared for them. When I say we, law enforcement across the state wasn't prepared for them. Obviously, red flag laws that just went into effect last weekend, and we could certainly talk about that.
For those who aren't familiar with red flag laws.
Well, the actual name of the law is the Extreme Risk Protection Order law, otherwise called red flag laws, where a family member, a school superintendent or their designee, or law enforcement could actually go and to Supreme Court. They would have to file with Supreme Court, testify before a Supreme Court justice as to their reasons why they think someone in the community is a danger to themselves or others, and they have access or they possess weapons. If the Supreme Court justice feels that there's enough evidence presented to them at that initial hearing, then they would issue an extreme risk protection order or red flag order, which basically would then order law enforcement to go to that person and seize all their weapons and also prohibit them from buying any weapons. And then within a few days, a full hearing is held where that other person comes in. And it's one of those things where we understand the benefits of getting weapons from someone who's dangerous, because our concern is not with the legal law-abiding citizens. It's always been with the person who may be a risk to themselves or someone else. But we also have a little concern because we want to ensure that there's due process here. We don't want to be taking someone's weapons without giving due process because they're very difficult to get back once they're taken.
Boy, that seems to me to be just a tinderbox of danger when you go to somebody's house to take their...
And that's, we didn't even get into that. Because again, we're coming to someone's house to take their weapons based on what someone told a judge. Now, the judges assured us, and we firmly believe that they will. They assured us they will listen to the case, fully. It has to meet a specific criteria pursuant to the legislation. And then if, in fact, it meets that criteria, they would then issue an order to the jurisdiction with primary jurisdiction, or the police agency with primary jurisdiction, to execute that order. So if a person lived in let's say the village of Whitesboro, then that order would be issued to the Whitesboro police for them to execute. And then, of course, if they felt it was an extreme risk where they couldn't handle it, they would go to us or the state police to assist them with it. So it's going to be It's quite a change from the way we operated. I mean, now, I should say not now, but prior to this law, if there was a concern, people reported to the police, we investigate, and then we would get an order to take the gun. So this basically takes it kind of goes around the police and goes right to the court directly.
So, and you think that's the way to do it?
I don't.
Yeah.
But again, I think there'd be a better way to do it. But I guess it doesn't matter at this point. We expressed our concerns because, again, we want to balance the safety of the victims of potential domestic violence or potential victims of a mass shooting, but we also want to balance that with the rights of lawful gun owners too. It's quite a balance, and it can get hairy. And like I said, it's certainly a concern for us when these orders have to be executed. So we're currently putting together a protocol and how we're going to handle these. We haven't had one yet, even though it went into effect a week ago. And there's been a couple downstate issued, and again, it's a learning curve for us. But there's a lot of legislative changes this year that certainly have been putting law enforcement to the test.
Somebody told me who wore a uniform that the call that they always dreaded making at somebody's house was a domestic disturbance kind of a call. This one sounds like it would be.
Yeah, it's got the potential to turn, again, if it's not done right.
Yeah.
And obviously that's why we're putting a protocol together. You know, we have our thoughts, and again, you know, we're putting our confidence in the court system, and if they give us an order, I mean, obviously it's an order that has to be carried out. So we're hoping that, well, we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Rob Maciel's our guest. He's been the Oneida County Sheriff for 9 years. We're talking more with Rob right after this. Short break, right back.